We aim to inspire community members to think critically with one another. My name is Jordan Bauman. I'm one of the founding members of the Waterloo Forum, and it's a pleasure to be moderating for you this evening. The motion that we're going to be discussing tonight is the following. Be it resolved that universities should lift all restrictions on AI use for assignments. That's what we'll be discussing. There we go. As you're coming in, I did have a few questions on the screen. Hopefully you got to think about those. Hopefully they got your mind turning about what it is that we're talking about. I'd actually like to do a quick show of hands here in the room so we understand where the audience is at. If you're in favor of this motion, please raise your hand now. Okay, all right. And if you're opposed to this motion, please raise your hand now. Okay, wow. What that's a pretty big disparity. So we have a lot of work for our proposition side here. Yeah, and a lot of people to keep on your side over there as well. Yeah. All right. So I'd like to introduce our debaters now. We have a great slate. Arguing for the motion on the proposition side is Dr. James Nugent and Nyx Kucharski. Dr. Nugent is an associate professor in the Faculty of Environment and sits on the University of Waterloo Senate. He teaches about urban social and labor movements that advocate for the environment. Dr. Nugent is focused on creating policy change by contributing to coalitions and community initiatives. His teaching style encourages discussions and active learning, making his participation in this debate a natural fit. Nyx Kucharski is an honors biology student here at the University of Waterloo. Nyx is an executive of the University of Waterloo Debate Society and is the current president of the Canadian University Society for Intercollegiate Debate. We're grateful to have both of these debaters here this evening. Please welcome them with a round of applause. Arguing against the motion on this side is Dr. James Skidmore and Ted Ren. Dr. Skidmore is the director of the Waterloo Center for German Studies, the chair of the Department of German and Slavic Studies here at the University of Waterloo, and of course a professor. He also sits on the University of Waterloo Senate and Board of Governors. Dr. Skidmore researches German political history and thought in the narrative arts, and teaches courses on world cinema, cultural identity, and the global literature of truth and reconciliation. He's also interested in online course development and is a keen teacher. Dr. Skidmore welcomes the opportunity to debate this evening. Ted Ren is a political science student here at the University of Waterloo. Ted is an executive and former president of the University of Waterloo Debate Society and serves as the treasurer of the Canadian University Society for Intercollegiate Debate. Please extend a warm welcome to our opposition debaters. So now I'd like to go over the format for this evening so you know what to expect. We'll begin with a formal debate. This will involve several speeches made by the proposition and opposition sides, arguing for and against the motion. We'll then move to a time of question and answer where audience members are welcome to ask questions to any of the debaters. Your question can be directed at a specific debater or to the whole panel. So we encourage you during the debate, take note of any questions that come up. There will be a time for you to ask. That will conclude our scheduled events for this evening. We'll have lots of food just over on the right side here, so we encourage you to stick around, talk with those here to discuss what went down. And if you need to leave early, that's fine. Please grab some food on your way out still. So that's that. Now I'd like to outline the rules for our debate so we know how this is supposed to happen. We'll start with a round of opening speeches from each debater. These will be 8 minutes each. Then there'll be 2 rounds of rebuttals for each speaker, with the speeches being 3 minutes long. We'll then conclude with 2 5-minute closing speeches given by each professor. Points of information. These are questions asked by the opposing side during a speech, can only be asked during the opening speeches, and they're just restricted to 1 per speech. So don't get thrown off when that happens. When a speaker has 1 minute remaining in their speech, I will just make this sound, just so they know, and I'll do 2 of those to indicate the end of the speech. If the speaker speaks for longer than 30 seconds after that time, I will just cut them off. So with all that business out of the way, we can begin our debate. So I'd like you to welcome our first proposition speaker, that is Dr. James Nugent.
Jordan promised a civic debate that would be peaceful, and then he shows up in a sling, so I hope this goes okay. All right. Today we are arguing that universities should lift all restrictions on generative artificial intelligence tools when it comes to student assignments. The list of AI tools like ChatGPT grows by the month. Currently, students must navigate a plethora of academic integrity policies when it comes to using these tools, with unauthorized or undeclared use of considered plagiarism, an offense under academic integrity policies. Our position is that all restrictions should be lifted on all assignments. However, we are not arguing against or for policies with respect to tests and exams. We posit that lifting restrictions on AI tools is pragmatic, fairer, and will set up our students to succeed in a quickly changing labor market. More importantly, it will make us better teachers and better learners. Contrary to widespread fears, AI tools can help develop critical thinking skills and deepen learning. Permitting AI use will force teachers to change our assessments in ways that will restore student engagement and foster intrinsic learning. So first, unrestricted use of AI for assignments is simply pragmatic. It's become increasingly difficult to detect when students have used AI for an assignment, and basically impossible to prosecute AI plagiarism through academic integrity policies. Simply put, the robots have won the academic integrity arms race. AI tools are getting better at replicating academic writing, gathering research, producing accurate citations, computer programming, and even the creative arts. Rather than engage in a plagiarism detection arms race, we cannot win. It's better we spend our time and energy adapting both as educators and learners. Second, teaching our students how to use AI tools and encouraging their use will better prepare our students for the labor market. It's increasingly assumed by employers that graduates will be proficient in AI tools. For example, students are being asked to demonstrate AI skills during co-op interviews. We should set up our students to succeed professionally by creating a free and open dialogue with our students about how they are using AI tools so we can teach them more proficient use and they can teach us how they're using it, and they are the experts at using these tools in many ways. A full lifting of AI use restrictions is needed to give students the confidence and to engage in transparent dialogue about AI use with their professors without fear of judgment or reprisal. Third, lifting all restriction on AI use will improve fairness in terms of academic integrity and access to academic supports. It is unfair for universities to prosecute only a small number of students who use AI tools in such sloppy ways that they get caught. Meanwhile, giving a pass to the majority of students who are better at concealing AI use or who can afford to pay for more sophisticated AI apps that render their AI use undetectable. Now, a primary concern of AI tools is that they will undermine critical thinking. If teachers bury our heads in the sand, this is a legitimate concern. However, if instead we teach our students how to use AI effectively, rethink the purpose of assignments, and change our overall method of assessment, then we will see that AI tools can be important supports for developing critical thinking skills and deepening student learning. First, I don't think we do a very good job, to be honest, teaching critical thinking as it is with our current method of assignments. There are many reasons for this I can't get into, but suffice to say that restricting AI use will not save us or magically bring about critical thinking, since it's not really there for the most part. More to the point, AI tools can act as personal tutors to enhance creative ideation, to deepen understanding around course concepts, to help students workshop their critical thinking skills. Gaining clarity on concepts from AI tutors is especially useful for first and second year students who we know are often too nervous to ask questions in class or to visit their professors during office hours. And I'd love to be available to my students 24 hours, 7 days a week. And judging by the time of some emails I get, they maybe assume that. But the truth is I can't be, and a personal AI tutors can help fill in those gaps. A current problem is that instructors and TAs are grading students on their creativity and critical thinking skills, but seldom spending the one-on-one time with students, which is necessary to truly develop those skills within the context of a specific assignment. We should be training students to write well-crafted AI prompts that can help them brainstorm, help them to see multiple perspectives, and help them to identify where in their assignment they could further develop ideas. A primary rationale offered by those who want to restrict AI use is that students cannot develop critical thinking without engaging in the writing process on their own. While to be sure, the writing process can help with critical thinking, we'll argue that it's not a necessary condition for critical thinking. Simply put, humans thought critically before written language, and one need be literate to be critically minded. Perhaps most famously, Socrates, the founder of Western philosophy, never wrote anything down. We are likely moving back towards a more dialogical or oral communication culture, or some hybrid of that, as evidenced by social media, but that doesn't mean losing critical thought. In fact, we hold that AI can allow students to focus on more abstract, higher order thinking, even if there are some trade-offs in terms of learning writing mechanics. Lifting restrictions on AI use will not leave instructors without a means of assessing student learning. Lifting AI restrictions won't mean grading essays, reports, problem sets, or online discussion posts that students mindlessly auto-generate through ChatGPT, which is actually the problem right now. Rather, as we'll argue, by openly allowing AI use, approaches to assessment will have to shift in ways that encourage active learning and foster intrinsic learning. And we're going to be talking about this today, these three approaches: a shift to in-person tests and exams, dialogical assessment, one-on-one with a human touch, and problem-based learning. I look forward to hearing the other side's position and the debate as it unfolds. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nugent. We'll now move to the first speech for the opposition side, Dr. James Skidmore.
Thanks. That's on. Thanks for having me. Nice to see everyone here. We come to university to learn. And learning is more than getting grades on assignments and it's passing courses. It's about changing who we are. You can't go through university without being changed socially, mentally, intellectually. This is why AI can be scary. It can threaten the ability of a university to change us, to equip us with new skills, to provide us with new insights, to develop our ability and to grow our intellect. Unrestricted use of AI can rob us of these opportunities to learn and to grow. The old adage puts it best. Give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man a fish, he eats for a lifetime. Universities exist to prepare people for a lifetime of eating fish. And that's to say a lifetime of growing intellectually. Now, there's no doubt that AI is going to be part of that learning process, that learning journey from now on. And we certainly don't want to prevent that. At the same time, learning with and through AI needs to be guided and facilitated. All student learning is restricted in some manner. Course reading lists, assignment guidelines, tests, these all place restrictions on learning. Well-meaning restrictions, for sure, but they're restrictions nevertheless. And they're well-meaning because they ensure that the learning is conducted in a productive and useful manner, free from cheating and geared towards real knowledge acquisition. Restrictions in learning are a little bit like restrictions in sporting events. They help everyone know what's expected and what's possible, and they prevent a slide into chaos. So the lines on a tennis court, the boundaries in the tennis court, don't exist to inhibit play, but to regulate it by giving everyone a clear set of expectations. Otherwise, chaos would ensue. We aren't against playing tennis, and we're not against AI, but we argue that unrestricted use of AI at universities would not be beneficial to the students and in fact could cause some harm. Guardrails for AI in courses do not remove AI from courses completely. They simply help to ensure that students can benefit from AI in an intellectually sound manner. Three areas where AI have a lot of impact underscore the need for these guardrails, for these restrictions, these protections. AI and cognitive or analytical ability. We would argue that overuse of AI, not use of AI, overuse of AI in student learning can lead students being less able to think on their own. Frankly, I'm not interested in teaching students critical thinking skills. I'm interested in teaching them how to think. There's a difference. Thinking is something that's valuable to us in every aspect of our lives. And we don't want to lose that ability. I think that students might lose that ability to reason, think, understand complex arguments, to present ideas coherently. Not necessarily in every case, not every student would do that, would happen to them, but that could be a problem. The cognitive offloading of AI enables, what it enables is something that's the opposite of learning. The cognitive offloading, the idea that, oh, we have a second brain, it can take care of all the facts and the knowledge we need, etc., prevents us from growing intellectually. And the other thing that will happen with this is that students can develop a false sense of confidence, thinking that they've acquired knowledge, when in fact they've only gained a superficial understanding of a topic at hand. It's because they haven't, if they've been given the information, they haven't gained the information on their own. That would lead us to believe that students could end up knowing less. With the offloading, we forget that there are some things that human beings just need to learn themselves on their own in a way, with some assistance, of course, but that they have to learn things on their own. I teach languages, perfect example. You can't rely on AI to get you through using language in your lives. Just think about it. Unless, I read an interview with Kurzweil in the German press on the weekend, and he thinks we're all going to have attachments or implants in us by 2029, so maybe then AI can do that. But until then, we're implant-free. Since students would know less, they're also less able to assess what I would call the validity of the information being provided by AI. And this leads us to a second group of issues, which are then the ethical issues around AI. And you've all heard of some of the issues that have happened with Elon Musk's Grok bot and all of that. But the thing is, if there's an overuse of AI, that can lead to less knowledge on the part of the learner, meaning that the learners be less capable of recognizing factual errors. They'd be less capable of identifying the ethical issues, the copyright issues, the legal issues surrounding AI use, and where AI comes from, if I can put it that way. They become part of an AI bubble in which their education is being conducted, and I think that becomes problematic because it prevents them from understanding how that information is being served to them, where it's coming from, etc. Of course, you can teach that, you can help people understand that. I think we should teach that and help people understand that. But if we overuse it, I think we start to forget some of that. Removing restrictions, generally speaking, would signal to students that AI can be used in any way for any purpose. The last group of issues that we'll be discussing tonight, that's Ted and I, is then what would happen to the perception and reputation of universities if AI were used in an unrestricted manner. Universities are already under a lot of pressure for being not very useful, and are they worth the money, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They have a big reputational issue at the moment. How would people perceive the value of a university education if they thought it was all being done by AI? How would you feel as students if your education was conducted in such a manner that most of the marking or and even the instruction was being done by a bot and not by a human being? I mean, if that's what you want in university, then you should vote in favor of the proposition. I'm not sure that's what everyone wants. Anyways, I'll leave it there. Thanks for the extra bell. And Ted and I'll, we'll speak to you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Skidmore. Now we'll move to Nyx over here on the proposition side.
Okay. Sorry, I'm not quite as tall as Dr. Nugent over here. So, okay. We all good? You all can hear me? Okay. I'm going to do a few things for you today. First, I'm going to be rebuilding a lot of the parts that my partner has talked about, and I think really engaging with the reality that restrictions on AI does not actually stop students from using AI. This is the unfortunate reality which we live in, and we need to, instead of trying to restrict AI and trying to fight this losing battle, to force professors, to force education itself to shift the way we do it so we can actually teach students to think, so we can teach them, and so we can also give them the tools and the skills to be able to thrive in the world in which we are headed. Then I will also be going on to some refutation. Okay, so first, as my partner's already told you, and as I think a lot of us can just understand, AI is being used. We have AI, it is out there. I want a lot of you in this room who are students to think, have you ever chosen not to use AI because it wasn't allowed? No. Likely, you either used it anyways, or you just intrinsically agree that you want to do the assignment yourself, you want to get that learning. It is not professors actually telling you, don't use AI, that makes students not use AI. This is happening anyways. This is the reason we have things like Waterloo not telling professors to just basically ignore AI use, because it is not worth trying to go after it. It is so hard to prove that a student has used AI, and AI is getting much better at avoiding detection anyways. Literally, go put a prompt into ChatGPT and then go put it into an AI detector. Half of them will tell you that that is 100% human written. I've tested it myself. They don't work. It is a failing system that we have trying to place restrictions on this and trying to actually come back at this. It has wasted resources. And I agree. I think a lot of the ways that we do assignments right now, or just having students mindlessly plugging things into AI, means you're not actually getting learning, means you're not actually thinking critically. But what do we need to do? And I think the key thing here is that we need to shift the way that we are actually learning. Because I think there's a few ways in which we have assignments, and I think it varies very broadly between education things. So the way I in biology learn and do my assessments, tests, and assignments looks very different than the way a political science student does, or the way an economics student does. We are learning very different things. I think there are wide applications of this. But I think broadly, I'll take your PY in a second. I think broadly what happens is there are a few different things here. I think if your goal in assignments is to be testing the knowledge that you're actually doing, there are more effective ways to be doing this. A lot of the assignments that we have are just regurgitation of facts. So it's doing a biology quiz on human anatomy and just regurgitating some things. It is something that you're likely already cheating in other ways or using AI from getting that knowledge where you're not actually deeply and critically thinking. And professors are just going to continue to use this. There's no push or shift for this thing to change when we can just say, oh, don't use AI and pretend that that's actually working. What you do when you say, no, all of you students, you can use AI, you can do this. Professors then are going to go, well, I want to know that my students are learning something. I want to know that they're actually being tested, and they're going to have to change the way that they do assessments. You are likely to have more professors doing things like tests or quizzes in person, or you're going to have like group projects, or you're going to have things where you have to talk and explain your reasoning. Because right now, the way that you're graded is on that final product. It is the essay that you produce, the essay you turn in. It is the quiz that you hand in. You're not graded on the thinking and the process that gets you there. Because what AI does is it just gives you that final product. But what you are likely to get is a shift instead to putting more of a focus on the way that students are learning, on the process. Why did you come up with this answer? How did you get here? On talking with students, seeing the things that they are actually gaining from learning, and then being able to work with that actually on that process, on that thinking. I'll take PY if you still have it.
Yeah, on our side of the house, we're defending restricted use of AI. How is this shift that you're talking about not going to also happen on our side?
It doesn't happen a lot of the time on your side, or it happens a lot less slowly, because you still have AI painted as this like negative thing, or you're just saying like, oh, this is okay, we're going to restrict it and it's not going to happen. There are a lot of professors who are not wanting to make this change, or who are not going for this. What you need to do is acknowledge that any resources that you are currently putting towards AI restriction are not working, and it is not worth that benefit. You need to accept that the AI is a world that we live in, and you need to move forwards from that, and the way you do that is giving up on trying to stop it, and instead embracing it and seeing how we can actually use it to get better. And I think what you're likely to have here is more shift to also more human interactions with your professors or with the TAs who are grading you, because this is something that you can't just put through a chatbot. It is going to have more human interactions, more of that dialogue and actually talking with students, which means you're likely to develop a lot better relationships with the students that you actually have, which is how you get more learning. It's how you get students actually interested and engaging in their courses. Okay, to do some refutation here, they tell us that like AI is like part of this process about like we need to like learn and restrict the way that AI has. They tell us a lot about like why we have restrictions or why things are restricted in general. And I want to engage in a few things. I think I do agree that like, yes, we have restrictions in university. You're not allowed to cheat on like your tests and exams. You can't plagiarize from other people's work. But the difference between restrictions on AI and restrictions like writing an exam or a test is we can actually measurably defend those. You can see when a student is looking over at another paper or has snuck something in. There are ways in which you can actually defend those restrictions. You can prove that a student has cheated and they have some benefit. But you cannot do that with AI, especially as it is increasingly getting much better at avoiding our detection than we are getting at detecting it. So what you need instead is to try to shift the narrative and to use it as a tool. Because I think that is the other thing. I don't actually like AI. I am against AI. I disagree with its existence. Maybe I grew up watching too many movies about how bad it becomes, but I don't like it. But the sad reality, or the reality that we live in, is that it is increasingly becoming prevalent. Everywhere, every company is trying to use AI, is trying to put it into their work, to develop it, because they realize that AI is being used as a tool to bring the human mind further, to do the basic things that the human mind doesn't need to, so that we can actually use our creative capabilities to invent things, to continue, etc. But what you get when you are now encouraging further use of AI and you're encouraging students to use it is you get a transparent and open dialogue with students about how they are using AI. It is no longer a taboo subject. Because let me tell you right now, if your professor comes up to you and is asking you how you're using AI in class, are you going to answer? Are you going to tell them? No. But what you get when you take this away and you allow students to do that is you get a unique open dialogue with students about how they're using it, and thus you develop a relationship in which the professor is able to talk to the student and tell them how they should be using AI. Because I think there are ways you can use it to benefit your learning. Instead of just getting that A, B, C answer, it's telling you why that has the answer, walking you through it, asking questions to it. There are ways in which you can use it to actually enhance the learning you have. ChatGPT also just recently came out with a study version that literally has this built into the function of the AI to ensure that the students are actually learning and not just getting the answer at the end. But you cannot get this when you are telling students that it's restricted, when you are not just allowing them to engage with it. I also want to engage with a bit of this. Part of this is if students want to shoot themselves in the foot and not actually learn anything, they're going to do that regardless. In university, it is not the job of the university to hold the hand of a student and walk them through it. We need to be trying to give them the skills, but the onus will always be on the student to do that learning, to speak up. So what we are trying to do is give students these tools and then actually working with them so they can develop the skills to use them effectively. This will also help students in the job market when we have told them how to use it effectively, when we're teaching them how to use prompts and how to do this for any assignments they are using. We're teaching them effective skills that they're going to be using within their workforces so we can actually help them get jobs, help them be effective, and in general, just helping people use AI as an actual tool to be learning and also getting professors to make better assignments to more focus on learning and not just the outcomes.
Thank you, Nyx. We'll now move to the opposition side and Ted Ren. Ted, if you can keep yourself close to the mic.
Opposition has 3 clear ways where we win this round. In this speech, I'm going to go through each of them and explain why on all 3 rounds we beat side proposition. But first, I want to do a couple extraneous responses. The first thing they say is that this is principally unfair. I don't know why this principle exists or why it applies in this context when it doesn't apply in other contexts. We don't tell students that cheating in exams is now allowed because some students get caught while others don't. This is not a principle that we use in our day-to-day life. I'm not clear why we should use it here. They say it's easier to prove like when you're cheating on a test, whereas it's like not very easy to prove when you're cheating, like using AI. I don't know why this is true. Like when your proctor says, this person cheated, like this is just literally he said, she said. I'm not sure why this is even a good standard of evidence to begin with. So like their own metric is like wrong. But the second thing I would just note is that like you could ask for drafts. You can ask them to like prove that they actually did the work and that they actually manually typed it. Like we've like literally caught high schoolers like cheating in like debate tournaments because they literally had no like proof that they actually wrote like the work or that they literally had ChatGPT search history that said I looked this up. Like surely you can like enforce it in some way. The second thing they say is this is unenforceable. Even if it is the case that we cannot catch everyone who uses AI, I still think this is fine because at the end of the day, you get less people who use AI. The reason why is because this is a deterrence mechanism, which means that people are afraid of using AI because they fear the consequences. The reason I don't use AI, for example, is because I know that if I am caught using AI, I could potentially be looking at massive, like my academic like record could be flagged, and this could like massively impact my ability to like progress in my career later on or go to like graduate school. So this means I will not use it, like even though it is like an option that exists, and even though I can maybe conceal it. So this applies to a large number of people, which means on net fewer people use AI. The third thing they say is that like professors won't change, and then like we're not able to like get like all of like the more like innovative learning on our side. I think there's some degree of competition that exists. That is to say that like if you're a professor who's like not adapting to the current norms, like or like better like more innovative ways of teaching, then students will just stop taking your course because they're not actually learning anything from your course. Like you're just gonna get a lot of bad reviews on like Rate My Prof or whatever. So this basically means that like over time there's an incentive for these professors to adapt. Last thing I would just note is we on our side of the house defend restricted use. That is to say we can still do things like have courses that teach students how to like use AI. We can still like do like that kind of teaching. We just don't have to do it in the incredibly unrestricted way that they defend. The first thing I want to talk about is just like basically like the select cases where it is absolutely imperative that we have no AI like being used. I want to note their burden was to prove that you like remove all existing restrictions on AI. I think the problem is at the point where they fail to prove this burden, they're losing this debate already. The first thing I want to note is that like government like literally because there's like let's just talk about the examples. There's a couple clear examples where like having no AI is like not using AI is actually instrumental to you learning about it. Like Dr. Skidmore was very clear. Like in order to like learn a language, you need to like be able to actually think in the language, and you need to actually write a paper in the language. Like this often like helps you like gear your thoughts in that specific language, and over time develop the skills necessary to form your thoughts in that language and to actually engage with other people like in, for example, German or whatever. So at the point where you offload a large part of this to AI, you just like get a lot worse at that language, and you just like don't learn it as effectively as in the cases where you would use it otherwise. Same things could also be applied to things like, for example, coding, where like if you like copied code from ChatGPT and did all your assignments from it, you're not meaningfully learning how to code, which means that you're overall less skilled at the things that we're trying to teach you in these courses. I think there's a couple reasons why this is like bad. The first thing is, like, I think it's just the case that, like, a large number of students are going to use it for a couple of reasons. One, there's time constraints. That is to say that, like, because we have a lot of, like, work to do in a very finite number of time, there's a massive incentive created on their side of the house to, like, use this AI, like, and cut corners. So a large number of people are going to do it, and they're, as a result, going to learn less well in those courses, and they're just going to be less prepared in the real world. So I think, like, on their side of the house, like, they just make these courses much less useful for students to actually take them. The second thing I want to talk about then is just why like AI is just bad generally. A couple of things I want to note. there's like a couple of problems that exist within AI like that are currently problematic that like we have like largely not addressed like sufficiently in like the world. First, there's things like copyright. Like a lot of like the stuff that comes like from AI is just like stolen from like other like from existing copyrighted sources. But second, I would just note that there's like other problems with AI, for example, like racist biases, etc. All of these problems like exist and are likely to go unaddressed. Sure, they're gonna say these problems exist on both sides of the house, but here's why this is like worse on their side of the house. One, there's greater normalization. Like I think there's like a greater normalization of these problems, or there's like less discourse that occurs around these problems. Like when there are restrictions, professors are likely to like go to like their course and like actually at the talk like start at there's like term like talk about like potential faults with AI. For example, they're likely to say don't use AI because it is potentially plagiarizing. Don't use AI because it is like academically dishonest. They are going to go in front of their course and justify the reasons why they have these restrictions at the start of every course. So this creates some degree of discourse around why these restrictions exist in the first place, and students are aware of the potential problems. But when you remove all restrictions, there's no longer an incentive for professors to ever do this kind of like dialogue with their students, meaning that like you have less exposure to these problems to begin with. But two, I would just note that like instances of students like accidentally saying something mildly racist on a paper or like accidentally plagiarizing on a paper are more likely to happen on their side of the house. When there's no discourse around it, like people are more likely to like engage like in this are more likely to like do this kind of stuff like just because like they can do so like more easily on their side of the house. But the last thing I want to note is I want to deal with their argument about student like just teacher discourse and like why it actually gets worse on their side of the house. There's a couple of reasons why. One, every time we modify a rule, which is what we say, what we're defending like some restricted like use of AI, but like allowing some degree of like relaxing the restrictions over time. I think what happens is every time you like modify the rules, there's some degree of conversation around what happens. How can we like use AI to like make you more productive in learning? What can we do like what is AI useful for like when you guys like write like an assignment or whatever? On their side of the house, when they do like when they implement the policy of removing all restrictions, there's no such like discourse that goes on in for example the Senate. There's no discourse that goes on like in every like classroom. So like you just don't have this like interaction between professors and like students because there's never any space to do so, or there's never any incentive for like people to do so. They say that this is a tool, like this is going to be a useful tool and as a personal tutor. Couple of responses. One, like yeah, we can defend that as well because we are defending a restricted use of AI. So like if a professor wants to like have like a 24/7 tutor, they could unveil like a bot that can like exist on Learn or something. But the second thing is if like a professor is literally offloading like labor to like this like bot, like presumably all the problems I talked about get worse. So like if you don't have like a teacher like actually like being able to like supervise the bot and like when it says like racist stuff or something, like all of our problems that we outlined get significantly worse. Okay, let's then talk about the third thing in the speech, which is about perception. But before that, I'll take the POI. No? Okay. All right, let's talk about perception very quickly. I want to note, this argument is independently winning, independently of whether or not you believe AI is good or bad, because as long as people perceive that it is bad and that it is like academically dishonest for it to be used, this massively hurts the reputation of universities. As like Skid flags, there is like currently a large amount of distrust within like universities. People think it's woke, for example. There's a high cost. I don't know why I should like invest in a university degree. So a large number of people are already predisposed to getting a university degree. Why does this make the problem worse? One, I think like this is like a relatively newsworthy policy at the point in which it's implemented, which means that like people see that this is a radical shift like in policy by the universities, and they see that like oh, they're allowing students to cheat now. They're allowing students to like get away with like not actually doing their assignments, and like students are not actually learning now. So people are aware of this policy change and they react negatively if you believe anything we've said across the last like 16 minutes of like talking. Well, how does this impact like individual people? First, we think like for employers, you're less likely to have a comparative advantage. If like your employer every time you go for a job interview or submit your resume thinks that your university degree does not mean anything because there's a high chance you just ChatGPT'd your way through all your assignments and didn't actually do a single one of them. Two, for prospective students, like if you think that like you're like not actually going to learn anything from your university degree or that's completely worthless, you just won't go anymore because like you're just wasting a lot of money. But lastly, like we do a lot of research in universities. The perception of the research gets a lot worse when it's potentially possible that like a PhD student used ChatGPT in their like thesis. I think we'll expand on this a bit more later on. Proud to oppose.
Thank you, Ted. So we're now going to move into our time of rebuttals. These speeches are 3 minutes long instead of 8, and there'll be 2 rounds. So we'll start our first round now, and we'll start again with James Nugent. That said, when I make a mistake, I like to admit it. So I only did give you 7 minutes previously, so I'd like to extend your first speech to 4 minutes, and I will time it as such. All right.
I heard a double bell and I froze. There's a knockout punch. Okay. There's some fears being raised here, and I share these fears. We fear that there's no learning happening at university. We fear that, how are we going to sell the value of a university education to the public at a time of fiscal constraint? How are we going to maintain, I agree actually with the other side that learning should be transformative. And I actually think that this is something that the free use of AI can give us. And in fact, if we're talking about transformation and change, it's not just individuals that change through university. The university itself must change in light of new technologies and societal needs. I don't think we've actually been doing a very good job of focusing on learning and transformative learning at university. I think we're actually going in the other direction. We are really just making university a transactional experience, a stepping stone to getting a job, just another thing students have to do. Proof of this is actually that over the past 10 years, a recent study has shown a declining participation of students coming to class, attendance. Talk to my colleagues, everybody knows this, and there's studies that show that attendance is on a decline. Students aren't coming to tutorials, to labs. It's a transactional experience for them. So what lifting restrictions on AI will do is actually force us to change the way we do assessments. It's going to accelerate something that I think we should have already been doing. And so I want to get concrete about what I mean, what's going to happen to kind of get rid of some of these fears, I think, and show why lifting restrictions will be a good thing. So in terms of assessments, and this could be assignments, but also exams, one approach that's going to happen is we're going to have to rely more heavily potentially on in-person tests and exams, which AI tools would not be permitted. Remember, our position is just lifting restrictions on assignments, not on tests and exams. So this is one approach, in-person tests and exams. Students would still complete assignments throughout the term and receive feedback, but assignments would be ungraded, essentially homework or study guide questions. The onus would be on the student to properly learn concepts in practice writing or problem solving throughout the term, since AI tools would not be allowed as aids during the exam. So eliminating grades from assignments, but maintaining feedback could foster intrinsic motivation for learning and iterative learning based on feedback and reattempting assignments compared with what we have now, which is just punitive grading of assignments. Students who rely on AI tools to do their homework for them, as Nyx said, would only be shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to writing their tests. Of course, there's a lot of problems with high pressure tests and exams, and we just end up testing students' ability to cope with anxiety. So a preferred response that we're arguing for is a dialogical assessment, face-to-face discussions with students and their TAs and instructors about their assignments and projects will allow students to demonstrate and be challenged on the skills, including thinking and critical thinking, as well as deep learning, or problem-based learning. And with this kind of face-to-face discussion, you will get around this problem of students using AI, because they can use AI, but if they can't explain what they've created, it's not going to be any help to them. The benefit of this is that students are going to be socially motivated to come to class. We're going to return the human touch to learning, and students will see the intrinsic value of their education. We will promote learning, and I think also an open dialogue on some of these ethical issues that AI does present. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nugent. We'll now move to Dr. James Skidmore, 3 minutes on his first rebuttal.
So, can you hear me now? You didn't hear me last time? That's probably better.
Can you raise the microphone a little bit?
Yeah, sure, yeah. You have to tell me, I'm already bad of hearing, so you have to tell me if you can't hear me. Yeah, my students would love it if my microphone didn't work, let me tell you. So a couple of things I want to say. Just where James was just saying, was talking about the need to change how we teach change how we learn, change how courses work, and all of that, what he was discussing there, the notions of dialogical assessment and, getting away from the testing kind of paradigm, et cetera. That sounds great. You don't need to lift restrictions on AI to do that. You can do that right now, right? Nothing's stopping us as instructors or as a community of learners to doing that. It has the connection with the argument that, well, we have to lift all restrictions from AI in order for that to happen. I don't think so. I'm doing it in my grad courses already. They have no grades until the end when we sit down and talk about what should your grade be. So, that can happen already. I do share the optimism, though, about the future of learning is bright, and it can sound pretty negative when I come up and say, oh, AI is going to do this and that. The future of learning I think we can always be optimistic or positively disposed about what the future of learning will be, because as humans, we're inherently curious and we want to learn and we want to understand and grow in our knowledge, etc. My concern, though, is at the university level, when you're dealing with students at the age of what many of you are, late teens, early 20s, we might snuff that out by giving you too many easy ways out of doing it yourself. That's really the point. And so I don't want you to miss out on the opportunity to really explore and learn on your own terms and not be kind of driven to things through AI. That's the tipping point for me, if you will. One more thing. Do I have like a minute still? All right, good. You can get students to discuss how they learn already. The previous speaker, Nyx, was talking about how students won't tell you if they use AI or not. I talk to my students all the time. So tell me how you use AI. And they tell me how they use it. They use it to refine their grammar if English is their second language. They use AI to refine their essays, when they start, and then they say, well, I need to polish it because I want it to be really good, so you throw it into AI. And then I talk to them about that. I say, let's find your own voice here. The AI voice is so dull. It's easy to detect AI in an essay. The last paragraph always starts, in conclusion, da 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 da. Every time. It's easy to detect that. And so talking to students and getting them to think, find your own voice when you write. I'll stop there. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Skidmore. We'll now move back to our proposition side. Nyx, 3 minutes.
I have to make sure the mic isn't in the way of my notes. Okay, I think the main problem that I have with what opposition is saying is they are of the belief that when you have restrictions and you tell students not to use AI, they are not going to use it. TED tries to tell you that the reason students aren't using AI is because they have fears about the repercussions that'll come from it and fears about getting caught for plagiarism. But I think the difference between AI and the other forms of cheating, such as going on Quizlet, like Chegg, etc. The difference is that AI is so much better at doing that. It is so much quicker and it is tailored to the words that you put in. Unlike the other sources in which you need them to actually have the questions that you're looking for or the answers or the problems and the numbers to be truly effective for the cheating or the using it that you're getting, AI has all of that. It will do it for you all quickly and immediately and better than any other forms, which means students are using it, and a lot of them, because of that, because it is so easy and because it is so effective at that cheating method or that method of doing the work for you. What you need to be doing instead is instead of trying to fight this battle where you're just telling students not to use it and it's not actually working, is putting the resources, putting the effort towards actually making change, changing the way you assess. Now, opposition tries to tell you that you're also able to do this on their side, but you're not. Because when they are still spending resources, they are still spending time trying to tell you not to use AI, trying to restrict its use, which is not going to be effective. Because if you say, oh, you can use it for this parts of the assignment, but not this part, it is more likely that students are still going to use it for the whole because they already have it and they're already using it. But also, what you have it when you are still having these restrictions and you're kind of slowly lifting them and slowly shifting, is you have a very gradual and a very slow change happening. And the difference that we need is we need this change to be quick because AI is insanely quick. Just 2 years ago, just a year ago, my friends in CS couldn't use it in 136. It was not able to do the coding that they need. It can do that course easy peasy a year later. The difference is that we need to be quick and we need to be radical with the changes that we are making if we are to make these changes effectively to help students today. We can't be slow. We can't slowly let the gates out because students are already doing this. What we need to do is just give up on that and full force put our efforts in to changing it, to having more dialogue with students, to talking with them more through the processes, to giving different assignments that can't just be done by AI, to be changing the way that we actually use our system now, not slowly, so we can get benefits from it now. And quickly to deal with perception, I think this perception already exists because students are already using AI. There are multiple articles already out there telling you, oh my god, students are using ChatGPT for they're cheating. I don't think this perception changes very much. And also, especially when current society is adopting AI, when all the companies are using it, it is not going to be seen necessarily as this negative or cheating thing.
Thank you, Nyx. We'll now move to Ted Ren on the opposition side. 3 minutes for Ted.
Am I audible? Okay. I think the best push that we get out of government at this point in this debate is that you're basically going to create an incentive to basically have more dialogue and change the way that we do assessments. I'm just going to flag that we are very clear that when we restrict AI and we have some lifting of restrictions over time, we're able to get an impetus for this change anyways. Insofar as, one, I tell you in my speech that there are competition incentives that exist so that if a professor is basically sort of like a Stone Age professor and not adapting to new technologies, no one will take their course because they are not preparing you for the real world. You're not getting anything useful out of their course. So the only people this means that professors, if they want students to continuously take their courses and for people to continuously want to learn from them or to not have their reviews tanked on rate by profs, they will have to change over time, which means that even if it happens a bit slower, we are able to get a lot of the changes that they are able to get that they want on their side of the house. But I want to be very clear. The types of assessments that they say that professors are likely to shift towards are worse forms of assessments for students. A couple things I would note here. One, because they allow unrestricted use of AI, it means that students, because now they can effectively cheat on all of their assignments and effectively just do not put in as much effort, they're going to do worse on those assessments. A couple of reasons why. One, students are, I think, pretty clearly, in many cases, either time constrained or kind of lazy. No offense, guys. The reason why is just one, there's an opportunity cost. I could just either spend 6 hours writing a paper, or I could just put it in AI, get it done in an hour, and then spend the other 5 hours partying or whatever. Humans are just inherently short-termist just because we have some dopamine, some incentive to chase a dopamine rush, which gives us short-term pleasure. So if there is a potential to have to make a bunch of shortcuts, most people will do it, and most people will cut those corners. The second thing though is I think the methods of assessments that they flag on their side of the house are worse methods of assessment. They say we're going to do more exams, we're going to do more tests in person. I have no idea why they want to defend this because when I was in high school, taking an exam was actually freaking nerve-wracking because it was 30% of my grade. I had massive exam nerves. A lot of people are just really nervous when it comes to exams. A lot of people just don't write exams well. So because of that, it is in many cases just a worse way to assess these students. And this is why in fact many professors have been trying to shift towards doing more assignments because they perceive this as being more representative of your overall understanding of the knowledge rather than these tests or quizzes which are dependent on how good you are at memorizing something. The second thing they say is that the end point here is that just that students perform worse on these assessments. So basically they just make assessments and learning much worse on their side of the house. Lastly, I want to deal with the perception argument because I do think this is still independently round winning. They say that there's some degree of negative perception in these universities. This perception gets a lot worse on their side of the house when more people are using it, when the university publicly says in a statement, now you can do this, this is allowed, we're no longer going to crack down on it. So the perception is 100% of students are cheating instead of maybe the occasional student might be a cheater. So this has implications in all areas research, basically job hiring, etc. This is pretty bad. Proud to oppose.
Thank you, Ted. We will now move to our second round of rebuttals. Speeches are still 3 minutes long. I'd like to invite up Dr. James Nugent.
So unfortunately, if you're in the Faculty of Environment, you have to take my course. I teach ENVS 131. It's the communications course. Every student has to take it. So that's just the reality. And another reality is we can't police the AI. It's futile. Even if we catch students, okay, which is hard enough and only becoming harder as technology improves, administration has told us they're not going to prosecute them. It's just, so it's a futile exercise to really go down that road. Why do we need the full lifting? I think that's an important push from the other side, right? Why not just make it piecemeal here and there? Because if it's ambiguous, if students feel like in some courses they can use it, some they can't, I'm not sure, that shuts down that transparent dialogue, okay? It's like parents telling their kids not to have sex. Or maybe one parent says you can have sex in some cases but not others, and it's this vague thing, right? And I am linking it to sexual health education because students have questions. They want to know, and there are ethical questions, as the other side has said. And if we don't have an open dialogue with our students, I mean, some of the different forms of AI apps that Nyx said, I've never even heard about. And that's not uncommon for students to be far ahead of their professors on these issues. So we have to create a dialogue. And so long as there's restrictions in some courses and not others, we shut down that open, transparent dialogue. But more importantly, there is an imperative to receive the benefits of using AI, of lifting restrictions for learners and for teachers and for, frankly, our university. To be clear, we do not want more tests and exams. That is a risk of going down this route. But there is a much better alternative that I touched on, which is dialogical assessment and problem-based learning. And this is where you're talking to your professors and your TAs. You're not just, you can use ChatGPT to come up with your assignment, but if you don't understand your assignment and you're asked, well, tell us about this assignment, you're not gonna have an answer. Dialogical assessment is harder, actually. It's harder to explain to somebody orally, verbally, what your thinking is. So it's actually going to be a harder form of assessment, but it's social, and it's intrinsically more valued. So hopefully that's responded to some of the points. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nugent. We'll now move over to the opposition side, Dr. James Skidmore. Yeah. Thank you.
Good.
Yeah.
So there's a few things. I mean, Nick said earlier in one of the previous portions about a form of AI that it can tell, like, how did that work, Nick? So it would indicate whether the student has actually just sort of thrown the whole thing in or something. What was that about?
Study version, so it gives you the answers.
Study version, and then you can, because that's kind of a restriction, isn't it? Right? And like restrictions just exist in learning. They exist in our courses. It's pretty natural. And it's also, like James's point about would it become a kind of a confusing landscape for students because, well, you can do it in this class, you can't do it in that class, etc. That's university, baby. Like that's always the way it is. I can't tell you the number of times I've talked to students. Why we do it like this in this class? Why can't we do it like that in your class? Well, because you're in my class and you want to do it like that in the other class. Go to that class. It's just the way it is, and that's a good thing. That kind of diversity in terms of learning. This is how that's how the world works. So we want students to experience that. I think the main point though that I really want to make is that the restrictions is kind of a negative word, but it's really about we're here to help you learn as students, and we need to give you some guidelines and some approaches and some frameworks for that. You'll go out into the world and you'll do things on your own, and God love you for it. But we at university, we need to kind of give you some mapping as to how to do that, some pathways, etc. And I think this whole notion of unrestricted use of AI just explodes that and just sort of says, oh, we'll do whatever you want. And then I guess my last fear is that I'm concerned that about the reputational risk, et cetera, for the university. We haven't talked about grad studies, but grad students do a lot of assignments too. They're expected to be producing knowledge. Do we want them using ChatGPT and producing that knowledge? I'm not sure we do. Or not without guidelines and restrictions and a way of approaching it. But we have to be careful of that. I think we also have to be careful about faculty members using AI quite a bit. I can go now and plug in a few parameters into a bot and get a whole syllabus for a course. I don't think that's the kind of teaching you want to have. And so from the point of view for students, I don't want them to have that from their end either, if that kind of makes sense. I have to go.
Thank you, Dr. Skidmore. We'll now move again to the proposition side. Nyx, 3 minutes.
I agree with what was just said. I think guidelines are very helpful for learning. I think giving students the tools that they need to be able to effectively use a resource is good. I think that is how you get them using it well. But you cannot get that when you are telling them not to use it, because that is what these restrictions are often. It is saying, don't use AI for this. You can't use AI for this. You need to be coming up with this yourself. That is not guiding a student through it. What you get when you ignore that part, when you say, sure, use it how you want, however you would like, what you get is encouragement instead for profs to be saying, you guys can use it, but here's how you should. Here's how you should do it where you're still going to learn. Here's the way you should be wording your prompts so that you can still actually get a learning out of this. It is where you have an open and transparent dialogue about using AI effectively, because this AI use is happening, and it is happening in a way such that students are not learning. They are just getting the answers out of it. They are just getting what they need, and then they are leaving it at that, and they are not learning. They are not getting what they could out of it. What you need is dialogue, is you need a relationship. And earlier it was brought up that students are just going to tell you, my students talk to me about this. And I think that is maybe because you as an individual prof had developed a relationship with your student, but a lot of the time that is not the case, especially when you have first-year students coming in where profs sound scary. They don't seem approachable. It is a hard thing for a student to go and talk about this, and especially when you're doing it face-to-face and when you have and are told that this is bad, when you're told that this is taboo and you should not be using it. That is when you don't get dialogue. That is when you don't get talking, and thus you don't get learning, and you don't get students using it effectively and using it for benefit. And to deal with this idea of reputation, I think, first of all, there are going to be some differences when this is all universities doing it. I think if you have a sole university allowing it and the rest of them still restricting it, yeah, everybody's going to look down upon that university. But when this is a collective thing that is being adopted, that is when society shifts to it, because you have so many universities doing this. And I think we already exist in a world in which university is looking down upon. We already exist in a world in which higher education is being told it's not worth it. It is being devalued. So what we need to be doing is not necessarily worrying or focusing on that, because a lot of what you get from university comes from that internal anyways. It comes from that research, those things that you're actually producing at the end. I don't think this is actually going to have a true tangible effect. I don't think there's going to be less students going to university because of this. This is not really proven. I think this point isn't necessarily as certain to me. How is this actually going to affect when this is a large scale thing? What we've proven to you over on our side is this is how you get effective learning. This is how you get professors changing assignments and having strong incentive and motive for them. Because again, Ted tries to tell you that you're just not going to take that course. Most of the courses you take because they're either required or easy. I don't think students are actually taking them and then just going, oh, I don't like this prof, whatever. Also, a lot of these profs are tenured. So I think what you need to do is be forcing the majority of these profs to actually change for the benefit of students.
Thank you, Nyx. Our final rebuttal in this second round goes to Ted Ren. Ted, 3 minutes. You can speak over here if you like. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Hi, guys. I'm on co-op right now, and I'm working at a think tank. A couple months ago, we introduced an AI policy for the first time ever. This policy was made, yes, to restrict AI and to prevent misuse within the organization, but it was done with consultation of various departments, and there's an AI committee that's set up now in order to discuss future developments on how to implement the policy going forward and how to shape this policy. Similarly, I think we could use a similar model of discourse in universities in order to get the types of changes that that they want to talk about. What does this look like? One, I think this could look like things like discussions on the Senate of the university with our students rep talking to professors who sit on it about the ways that AI is evolving and how we could better change the policies that exist within most courses, and this affects the way that professors decide to use AI within their courses. Two, I think we're clear that you can use this in office hours. A lot of students have talked to Skid in his office hours about their uses of AI, and this has informed the way that he has altered AI policy over time. So we're able to get this sort of discussion on both sides of the house. Sure, maybe not everyone comes to these professors, and not everyone goes to them, but some students will. Some students will go to these office hours, or still will engage with the conversation to begin with. So you're able to get some degree of change. I'm not clear why you need 1,000 students to talk to professors. I'm pretty sure you could still get a lot of this change if only 10 or 100 students are sharing their stories. This is I think a reasonably meaningful sample. On their side of the house, the problem though is that they actually get none of this discourse. The reason why is because at the point where you put the policy in place, there's it's already put in place. There's no changing the policy. The effect of this is why would professors spend time out of their day to talk to students about the way that AI works? Because there's no it doesn't actually meaningfully change anything. The policy exists. There's no incentive actually for them to go to talk about this policy. As I explained in my speech earlier on, they needed to respond to that. But I want to be very clear here as to why we get better learning on our side of the house. We have guidelines that we put in place. These guidelines are important because they affect the way that students decide to engage with the course, and then affect the way that you decide what to spend time learning in the course or whatever. So you know how to know what to prioritize or whatever. So, this allows you to build basically a roadmap towards a final exam. The problem is when you're able to shortcut all this and circumvent the work that goes through all in all these assignments, you don't you don't do all these assignments. You don't do a lot of these assignments. You don't you just basically ChatGPT them. You basically cognitively offload all of this to an AI. I think the harm here is that you just don't learn these courses as well. So the methods of assessment that they want to talk about, you're just not going to do as well on those methods of assessment. Lastly, I just want to talk about reputation because I think the responses are quite flimsy. The last thing they said was that all universities will be hit with this reputational harm, and that is relatively marginal because there's already perception that it is being used. One, I think you just got a lot more media coverage that this policy change was put in place. So a lot of the discourse about how bad universities are get amplified. But the second thing I would just note is that I think universities are good. Even if it's all universities, I think all universities being harmed reputationally is a bad thing in the world. I think they needed to explain why otherwise. Opposed.
Thank you, Ted. So we're now going to move into our closing speeches. These are going to be from each of our professors. They will be 5 minutes long. No points of information during these speeches either. I'd like to invite up our proposition side. That's Dr. James Nugent for 5 minutes.
Thank you to the opposition. AI use is here to stay. The robots won this battle. Rather than fear this new technology, we should embrace it for the benefits it offers us as teachers and as learners. And indeed, yes, as a university that will improve students' learning by having them want to come to class through a social motivation. This necessitates engaging with our students in a free and open conversation and experimentation about how to use AI effectively. We can't do this under the shroud of possible academic integrity violations for using AI. The main question before us is not if, but how will educators adjust their assessments, including assignments, with AI in mind to deepen learning, to develop critical thinking skills, and to foster intrinsic learning. As it so happens, generative AI is coming at a time of increasingly checked out students and overworked professors and TAs. generative AI tools may be the catalyst we all need to take a step back and rethink student assignments. As any fan of science fiction will tell you, the rise of the robots might just be what humanity needs to bring us all together. Generative AI is not a common existential enemy, at least not yet, but it could very well drive educators to more dialogical, human-to-human based assessments that renews learning for both students and educators. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nugent. I'll now invite up Dr. Skidmore for his final speech. He has 5 minutes if he'd like to use them. You can also come over to this microphone as well. Yeah.
Okay. Let me get myself a little bit organized here. Yeah, so this has been interesting. I love the idea of creating a learning environment, a learning community that's more human. And yet I'm struck by the idea that we have to use technology to make that happen. Like, we need the robots to help us do that. I really don't think we do. It doesn't mean that the robots can't be part of the whole game, right? They can be involved in what we're doing. They can be used in what we're doing, but they're not a necessity to bring more human kind of interaction or more humanity to our educational system or community. You'll notice I'm wearing my Dana Porter library. You'll notice that. Yeah? I'm wearing my Dana Porter library pin. I've been at university as a student or a teacher for 45 years. And my greatest source of joy in all of that time has been spending time in libraries, exploring the shelves, digging into the resources, making connections, satisfying my curiosity, and expanding my knowledge of the world. For me, that's been just a fantastic life. And AI, frankly, is much like a library, right? It's a huge repository. But unlike a library, where we as the students or researchers can go on this magnificent quest of curiosity, AI just serves up its take on whatever we're looking at. Might be useful in some cases, but it's not entirely a bad thing when done in moderation. But when there are no restrictions on it, learning no longer becomes a rewarding and fulfilling expansion of the mind and even the spirit. It's no longer a truly human endeavor. An unrestricted use of AI could rob students of the thrill of discovery, and there'd be no satisfaction in that. AI can generate text and ideas and all manner of things, and it's great, and it can do lots of stuff. I don't deny that at all. But I don't think it fosters the kind of curiosity and creativity that I really want to see all of us be able to participate in and take advantage of. I think it actually stifles that. So I don't want an AI tutor. I don't want AI teaching students in sort of this brave new world kind of idea that we hear about at Senate. We hear about it from our president, that AI is going to do everything for us in the future. I don't want that kind of future for my students or for myself. But that doesn't mean that we don't need to use AI in the class, that we shouldn't have it available to students, that we make use of it. Yes, but we don't have to just kind of throw open the floodgates. We're like James was saying, we're all overworked as profs and students. That's true. There's a lot that needs to be done to revise how we function as a learning community. You guys are taking too many classes, for example. You're juggling too many balls. It's crazy. There's lots we can do to change that. But de-restricting or unrestricting the use of AI for assignments, that won't solve that problem, I don't think. thanks for listening to me. I really appreciate it. And I'm sorry I'm not on that microphone where you don't have to listen to me, but I appreciate you listening to me on this microphone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you to all of our debaters. It's been very interesting. We're now going to move to a question and answer time, which is an opportunity for any of you to ask a question of our panelists. You can direct a question to a specific debater, or you can ask it just in general, and we'll have one person from each side respond. We've got microphones set up in the room. We have one right over there. Stephen is also just setting one up right over there. So if you can move to one of those locations, that is appreciated. You can just kind of queue up by the microphone and ask your question. To start off, I'd actually like to ask one of my questions as people move to the microphones, and that is directed towards the professors. How do you use AI in your classrooms? Do you have a policy in place right now? And how do you plan to adapt that policy in the future as AI changes? So maybe I'll say, James Nugent first, and then Dr. Skidmore. Yeah.
That's gonna be pretty. Did I just break the mic? There we go. Yeah, it's gonna be pretty hard for me to restrict my students' use of AI, I think, going forward after today. But actually, what I did experiment in my communications course, and I allowed students to use AI, but I had them, what I ended up doing is breaking down the assignment. It was actually kind of forming an argumentative essay. And I had them, to summarize it, I basically broke it down into different components and had them experiment with AI, do prompts. I had them write, I think, 6 different essays using AI so they could learn different perspectives in different ways. I had them highlight to go through the argument of essay, highlight the claim, highlight the evidence. So even though the AI did generate the arguments, they still had to themselves go through with a highlighter and identify, what is the claim, what is the evidence. So in a way, I think I actually taught them better than I had in the past, where we just said, okay, write an argumentative essay, go for it. I actually had to break it down into the components of what is an argumentative essay and how do you write a good one and force them to do that. So I am experimenting with it, and to be quite honest, one reason I agreed to do this debate, or wanted to do this debate, is because I think we are in a very experimental time right now, and we have to hear all sides of the debate to understand and give us some direction. And I do think we have to be hearing from students especially. So I'm glad a lot of you are students. I'm glad you're here today. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Nugent. Yeah. Now we'll move to Dr. Skidmore.
Yeah, so I like that answer because that's kind of, I don't do that exactly, but I like that approach. One way I use AI in classes or have students use it, if any of you are familiar with perplexity.ai, a very good version thereof. So what I do is in some of my courses, we deal with a lot of kind of broad terms that have different ways of being defined. So things like cultural identity or feminism or things like this. So broad terms like that. And so we'll use Perplexity to generate definitions or to generate specific kind of commentaries on that. And then we'll use that as kind of a discussion object to discuss what does it get right or wrong, or how do you view that definition, and compare it to other definitions that they might have come across, things like that. So we use it in that, in my courses, we use it in that kind of way, and I've found it very productive. And I've encouraged students to use Perplexity because one of the things that kind of AI does well is provide sources. And then we discuss, well, okay, so that answer is based on, well, the gazillion bits of words that are in the LLMs, but also then here are the sources they're providing. And then you can have the discussion, what do you think of those sources? Are they valid, or are those the sources you would normally consult? Things like that. So that's how I use it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Skidmore. All right, so now we'll start taking questions from the audience. I'm going to go back and forth each side. I'm going to start on this side over here.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you to the organizers, too, of this fascinating debate and to all participants. I am coming at this as a professor, and I do allow AI use in my graduate classes, but haven't made the jump to undergrads. And I have some equity-based questions for the proposition side, either of you. And the key concern is partly, right now, these tools are mostly free. But my lab already has a paid subscription. Some of my colleagues are now paying $300 a year for like the premium versions of these AI tools. What happens when they pull the rug out and start charging, like most of these free services that eventually become monetized? Then do we become another, is this another sort of engine of inequity in our student population? And related to that also, the sort of pragmatic side of if there were this shift or dialogical assessment, I'm still trying to figure out how that works in my 350-person lecture courses, because 1 minute per student is 6 hours. But even there's all the biases that can come in when you start to do the sort of face-to-face assessments that written assignments can allow students in some ways to control. So the equity side, the equity question encapsulated is the sort of the cost of the tools, and then the idea that some of these other modes of assessment may introduce different forms of inequity. So thank you.
I mean, it's a critical question. I think that, first of all, there are already inequities, right? And so students who can afford it can buy a private tutor, right? And students who come from wealthy families don't have to work. And students who have money can also buy an essay online and buy a good one that no one else writes, or they can hire someone. So, what I actually think is that AI tools actually democratize cheating in a way. Now, that doesn't take away from your point, though, which is that, okay, now it's sort of free, it's cheap, what happens in the future? Well, it is noteworthy that the University of Waterloo has a version of Copilot, right? And so I think so long as we do have institutional software where it is accessible to everybody, I think especially for an undergraduate level, it should do the job, at least for now. So it doesn't fully answer your question. Now, in terms of the face-to-face bias, frankly, I haven't thought about that. So I think it's something that I'm going to want to think more about before I respond to. But I think that in general, if we're talking about empathy, I think there can be more empathy when you're actually talking to a human being than just reading a paper. But I'm not going to say that your point's not valid. I think it is, and how we control for bias, it's an open question and a good question. I think that challenges our side. So thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Nugent. In the interest of time, whenever a question is asked to a specific person, I'm just going to let them respond. We have a few people with questions, so we'll just try to move through them quickly. Yes, over here on this side. Go ahead.
Hi. First, thank you all, the speakers. The talk was great, and thanks for Waterloo Forum for organizing this. I too am a professor here at UW in communications, and I'm kind of a pushover, so I have lots of assignments, journal writing, reflections, where there's less of a need to use AI, although you still see it. But I found both sides very persuasive. And I'd like to just ask you for a different kind of question to sort of bring actual people and students into this, because it's so abstract for me at the moment. And I just wonder if each side could tell a story about a student that you know that has used either AI or has plagiarized or is any sort of contrivance to effectively do the work for them. And why did they do it? And what happened, or what do you think happened as a result?
Go ahead. Yeah. We'll start with this side first.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I teach a big film class, BCalt 100. There's still spaces available in the fall term offering, so please come. Great course, world cinema, it's great. Anyways, so I had a student who TAs were grading some response paper and said, "Oh, this feels AIE, of course," and they had a lot of those. So I said, "Okay, I'll speak to the student." So I got the student come in. I said, "So you used AI on this, so what's up?" So she said, "Okay, well, yes, I did, and I'm an international student. I'm from China, and I know how important it is to do really well." Right, so there's this pressure to do really well. We put too much pressure on, right? That we don't have an office of student well-being. We have an office of student success, right? We're pushing that so hard. So she's really keen on doing really well. So she takes her paper, she says, I write out a draft, I put it into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to refine my arguments and refine my points. Then it gets spit back at her. Then she takes it and puts it in Grammarly and says, Grammarly, fix the grammar. And then Grammarly fixes the grammar. And then she hands in her essay. And so we talked about that. I said, but and I mentioned this a bit in my portion there. Where is your voice in all of this, right? It gets flattened out, it gets ironed out and all of that. And I said, I'd rather see you make a few mistakes, but be speaking your something. She said, but no, these are my ideas. I said, I know they're your ideas, but you also have to think about it's not just the content of what you do, it's the form of what you do. So we had a great discussion about that, about how to think about that. Whether she'll change her way or not, I don't know. But it was clear that she was doing it. If it's cheating, it's that type of cheating that happens a lot, where students are panicking because they really want to do well and they don't think they're capable of doing well, so they do something that they think will make it better. And I think so part of that's on us. Like, why do we stress out so much about grades? Why do we push this success paradigm with our students, as opposed to, have you learned something? Think about yourself at the first day of term and the last day of term. Do you know more at the end of the term than you did at the beginning? Good, that's a success. That's all you need, right? That's what you want. But we don't have that. And so I think that's what's happening there. That's my example.
Thank you, Dr. Skidmore. Yeah.
I'm going to come from a student perspective on this. But I think a lot of the reasons that I see is often that there are extremely high, burdens that are placed on students. And that, a lot of the time we're taking 4, 5, 6 courses. We have 1 million assignments, 1 million tests. I'm a pre-med student, hopefully, so I have 1 million extracurriculars that I need to do to try to hold up, to try to get into med school. I think because AI can be so quick and so easy, and because it often can be better than you, or at least is much easier than actually learning the content yourself, that's why we'll turn to it or use it. And I've also, in my first year, I'm not going to name my friends, but my friends taking CS 136 used it because often the assignments were incredibly difficult to understand too. And I found this. I use it to help explain a lot of the concepts that I learn in my classes, because as you get to a lot of difficult concepts, I can find that it's really hard to find resources out there, especially when you can have courses that are so niche, or concepts that just, you can't find a YouTube video explaining it, you can't find an article, and maybe often I'm working at night because I sleep really late. I don't have other tools that are offered to me or accessible to me. So it's often just something that I use as a resource to help myself, and that my friends were trying to use to be able to work past that problem. What was that one logical step so they could write the rest of the code? I think it can often be both out of convenience, or the necessity, or believing that they have a necessity to use it, but also in using it as a resource, as a tool to try to make it to that next step, to try to understand something better with the time that they're given.
Yeah. Very briefly, Dr. Nugent.
This is something I wanted to get into, which is, I think it is worth asking, why do students cheat, and why are they using AI to do their assignments? And there's some external pressures that have been talked about, right? Students having to take on full-time jobs now to cope with higher cost of living, rent's expensive, tuition's high, especially for international students. It's only going up as we don't have funding for universities anymore. But there's also things like perceived competitive pressures in a worsening job market. Youth unemployment is reaching record high levels. But those are things we can't do much about as educators. But the university could do a little bit maybe about the tuition. But there's a lack of intrinsic motivation to learn, I think, also. And so, like I said, it's just a stepping stone. It's just another thing I have to do. I got to get this assignment done. So I think we have to understand, how do we get students to care about their assignments in a deep way, right? And I think part of that, again, I'm going back to this idea of the dialogical assessment. To make our position kind of clear, I actually think that it's kind of a paradox for us, but I think by lifting restrictions on AI use, we'll actually see less of it being used, in a sense. or it will be used in very different ways. It's not just to create an assignment, because like I said, if you have to explain the assignment to your professor or to your TA, right, and resources are an issue for this, we won't be able to maybe teach as much, but I think we just focus too much anyways on quantity rather than quality. But if you have to explain your assignments to your TA and have a conversation with them, for one thing, where is all your voice in it, in all of this, in this paper? Well, it's right there. You're talking to the student. You are literally hearing their voice, right? And they're gonna have to explain what they came up with. And they're not gonna be able to just use an auto-generated essay. Or if they do, they'll have to tell you the steps, tell you the thinking around it, and still understand the assignment well enough to communicate it. And in that case, I don't really care about the writing. I care about the ideas. And I care about them being able to explain the ideas. So yeah, I don't know if that helps a little bit more.
Thank you. We'll move over to this side again. Feel free to ask your question.
This is addressed to both sides, and I'll preface it like this: I've been in engineering and physics and philosophy now. I'm in grad school, and one thing that makes me sit on the fence based on what both sides have discussed is it looks like there's so many, like the problems brought up by both sides seems to depend on whether or not we're talking about undergrads versus grads, and also whether it's STEM versus art students. Because when I think about ChatGPT, I'm in philosophy, I don't want a machine to read a book for me because I want to read the book to begin with. And also I know that my career is not gonna make me money, so I don't, like seriously, like how many people are here in treating university as a technical school versus the humanitarian desire for learning that Dr. Skidmore referred to? The thing that I found dissatisfying about both sides is that there was not much discussion of the distinctions between grad and undergrads, and then the corresponding economic and personal incentives of people going into STEM versus the arts. And that's just a thing I pose to both sides.
We're going to start over on this side with the opposition again. Feel free to send up a delegate.
Yeah, I think we addressed basically all types of people who deal with like all types of degrees that like students might like go through, like for example STEM or like philosophy or that kind of stuff. I think while it is true that in many cases you like do go to your classes and try and then because you do have like a desire to like learn that kind of content, or because you like do genuinely like value learning, the reality is students, like as we have discussed like in the last couple of exchanges, are incredibly overburdened, and in many cases this is something that like is very difficult to do without it is very difficult to do this like while also managing your stress levels. So the unfortunate reality is many students will likely turn towards like AI as a result of it, because like they want to like just like be able to balance their courses and be able to like get through this as fast as possible, so that they can like do like study for a different different course, like study like or whatever, or they're also just gonna like they also like have other things that they need to do. Like for example, they might need to go to a job, they might need to like see their friends or that kind of stuff. So when you're balancing a lot of different things as a student, like it's very difficult for you to even if you genuinely do care about the learning, in many cases this is like not the overriding incentive that you have as a student.
Thank you, Ted.
Yeah, I think to engage at the point, I think a lot of what you get at is more of this like idea of like the intrinsic motivation, or like why students are learning, why they're going to classes. I think I think this happens in all degrees. I mean, I am studying in STEM. I'm in biology, I was in math, but I do it because I like it. Like I still do enjoy it. But I think you on both sides in STEM and like humanities have those students who are just kind of getting that degree, getting that thing to go out to the other side. But I think a restriction on AI doesn't necessarily, I don't really see how this like changes this or empowers students to be thinking intrinsically. Like I think that motivation to actually care about your assignments is something that has to come from either internally, like the way that you were raised, the values that you have and that you place on education. And I don't think a restriction or not can help change this. I think this is unfortunately something that we lack a lot in current students. And that I don't know how to solve that. I don't know whether like allowing AI or how you would ever go about really addressing that. I think to engage with like the undergrad versus graduate, I think it's very different in that, like, at least in my understanding, with like a lot of graduate studies, you are already kind of getting those students who are more intrinsically motivated. But I think at least in the ones in which you're doing like more research and stuff, I think having more AI, I'm already seeing this. Like I'm already seeing articles of people starting to use AI in their theses. Like I see TikToks of people talking about how they're using it to do some of the writing so that they can spend more of their time doing that actual thought behind it, so that they don't have to spend those hours like, oh, what is this sentence? Like I need to write these things. Like they're using it to be more efficient with their time. So I think it's really dependent on the person whether they're actually being able to use that to benefit themselves or not. And I do think there is a lot of nuance or like different ways that this is used at different ages and different studies.
Thanks.
I want to make one very quick point about this too, is that I think if we eliminate grades from assignments, it will go a long ways in getting rid of this idea that of a transactional kind of relationship with learning. I've done this in my courses, okay? And what you have is students can, they have to demonstrate competency. So if they're not competent, they have to keep redoing it. But then they're coming to you because they want to learn, not because they're going to get a grade, right? So I think we can change our assessment practices to actually cultivate more intrinsic learning than we are. It's not a full answer, but it's a partial one.
Thank you, Dr. Nugent. So yeah, now we're gonna lock in these 4 questions right here. Just for time's sake, I'm going to limit responses from each side to 1 minute and 30 seconds. Only one respondent from each side, and that will get us finished before 8:30. So we will hop over to this side here. Ryan.
Hello there. I really enjoyed the debate today. I've heard, I guess in this discussion, we've been hearing a lot about the effects of AI on students, on professors, on the reputation of institutions, how we learn. But one thing that I'm interested in querying your minds about is, what do you think are the technical limitations of AI? Because I guess from the level of the individual, we want to know what are the limitations that AI will be able to produce in our lives. To be able to know when and when not to use it.
Yeah, so I'll invite the opposition side to send up one speaker for 1 minute and 30 seconds.
1 minute, 30 seconds.
That's right.
1 minute, 30 seconds.
I can give you a warning, like 30 seconds left if you want.
Yeah, please do. I'll just ramble on.
Sure.
So you're wondering about what limitations there are to AI, or what? Yeah.
Like, let's say, on its ability to generate and retrieve information. Let's say, like, if you're trying to get information from an obscure book, you won't get it.
Yeah. You see, like the thing about AI is that it's just drawing from large language models, right? It's sucking that all in. And we think, oh, that must be really good because then we'll have all the knowledge. Yeah, and that's a real limitation. Like Nyx just said, students use it to, to dispense with some writing tasks so that they don't have to, they can be more efficient and they can concentrate on the learning or the research. But it's the writing that creates the knowledge, right? When we write, writing is a form of thinking. Writing is at our age, yes, Plato didn't write, but we're not Plato and we're not in an oral culture. We write to learn. We write to think. And the problem with the limitations, let's say, to AI is that all it's doing is drawing from stuff that's there and cobbling together in a very intelligent, though not human, intelligent manner. But that's information more than it is knowledge. Knowledge comes from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Skidmore. Yeah. 1 minute and 30 seconds from the proposition side.
Yeah. I mean, the simple truth is that I don't know. I don't know the technical limitations, and every time I try to learn them, they change. It is getting better. When I taught this communication course last year, AI couldn't do citations very well. Now AI can be doing citations well. So every time we set an expectation for what it can't do, it kind of surprises us. But also, from what I understand, and I'm not an expert in the technical side of generative AI, even those within the field can't entirely explain at a deeper level how it's making associations. But I think we can step aside from that and just say, like, is what it's spewing out useful? And I think it is. I think we can use what it gives us. And is it perfect? Well, not right now. Is it getting better? Yes. But I think we can use whatever it is giving us as just one of the many things we can use. I do just want to respond, though, to one of James Skidmore's points, which is that it is true, and I don't refute that writing is a form of thinking. But the point that I put forward is that writing is not the only form of thinking, and that we actually are, I think, shifting towards an oral communication culture.
Thank you, Dr. Nugent. We'll now move over here to this question.
Yep. So I think much of the discourse is centered around thinking that learning has some goals related to getting job and in the sense of getting grades and everything. So kind of utility has been attached to the learning itself. But in this kind of understanding of learning, we treat learning as a tool to get something else. But learning can be as a tool as well as the goal itself. For example, myself as a PhD student in mathematics, for me, the subjective understanding of the goal, which is to learn mathematics and the joy of learning itself, is at high pedestal. So that being said, how you deal with ignoring the subjective aspect of learning by attaching the AI things in our discourses is too much.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. We're not going to switch the order again, so we're actually going to go proposition side first, then opposition. One speaker for 1 minute and 30 seconds.
I think to engage with that point, I think when you're allowing AI usage or having AI usage in general, it doesn't detract from that. I think you still have people out there who actually are motivated by the learning. And like, I love learning. I love my human physiology. I love my microbiome. I really enjoy the things that I'm learning. Allowing me to use AI or not doesn't stop that from me. It doesn't mean I'm going to just immediately like put that there and stop that barrier. There's people who have that internal motivation, who have that care and that passion and desire, I think are still going to have this because that is the internal factor. That is their goal. And I don't think giving them more tools to that necessarily stops that. I think what we're trying to do is to help those people or to get more people with that kind of motivation, to have assignments that are more like geared towards bringing that out of people, to getting that more thought-provoking thing, instead of just having assignments that are that answer, that essay, that end product that I think works really well when your goal is just to get the grade and go to university. I think it's trying to get at that deeper learning, that more intrinsic motivation.
Thanks, Nyx. We'll now move over to the opposition side. One speaker.
I'm not sure I understood your question. So you're wondering about the subjectivity in learning. Yeah. What you're talking about then is like the learner brings a context to their learning. And it's really important in teaching to try to recognize that. It can be hard to do in a class of 150 people or something. It can be hard to do in a class of 10 people. But what you can do is encourage the learner to think about their whole context. And by context, I mean not just why they're in that class or what program they're in, but also what's their social or cultural background, what does that bring to their learning, and what does the makeup of the institution they're in bring to their learning, and there's multiple contexts and they all intersect. But what's really important there is getting the learner to reflect on the learning and not just do the learning. So to take a step back, as I'm doing now, and reflect on what they're trying to get out of all of that. Does that make sense? Great.
Okay, just a few more questions left here. One on this side. Feel free to go ahead, sir.
So I'll speak as a student in undergrad who I take a number of courses online for the convenience it gives to my schedule. And the discussion post requirement that comes along with these classes, there's an emotional component of this, which is when I spend time personally reflecting and bringing my own experience to a discussion online, to have it responded to by what is very obviously a copy and pasted AI prompt is both humiliating and disrespectful. That there is no recourse. Apparently the professor is not following up with the student because it happens week after week after week. It becomes worse because I not only have an obligation to create a post where I can dump my thoughts and leave it, but I'm also required to respond to posts from students who are exclusively using AI, at which point, why am I in the class? I might as well be talking to ChatGPT, and it's humiliating. It is a harsh experience, it is unpleasant, and it was 12 weeks of this in multiple classes. I also have a lot of systemic concerns, which are about more about how we operate as a society in a neoliberal capitalist system generally, and the reliance on AI will solve the future, and we should really be building toward a workforce and not, surviving. And the environmental impact of the massive demand on AI, which I was surprised did not come up, quite frankly. But I suppose I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that emotional component, because when I filled out my perceptions for course surveys this year, I realized during the course of this debate that I filled them out incorrectly, because I agreed that the professor had kept me feeling safe, when in fact I was routinely disrespected and humiliated.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, we'll move to the proposition side here first. Yeah.
Well, I'm not going to be able to answer your question fully. First of all, let's talk after, because I teach online courses, and this has been a concern for me as well, and I'd love to hear some more in-depth understanding from your perspective. And I think that we're going to either have to move away from discussion posts for the reasons you're saying, or we're going to have to do them differently in perhaps video posts or recorded posts. But even that, potentially you could just be reading off something, right? So we're at a time of experimentation, and there is a lot that we have to hear, a lot of feedback we have to get from students and take more seriously than we are. And so I don't necessarily have answers for you, but I can tell you that as a professor who teaches an online course, this is a major concern that I have. One of the things that I've done this semester with my online course is I've told students, invite me to your group meeting. Like, let's have some in-person conversation. Let's not just make it this totally online thing. But I think you're also getting to a deeper point, which is that if a symphony is written by an AI bot, does it sound as good as a symphony that was written by Beethoven? And we know Beethoven was deaf, and so used deeper, throbbing sounds, right? So there is an emotional human element that we do need to consider in all of this.
Thank you, Dr. Nugent.
I'm also taking an online course right now because I am on co-op, and quite frankly, I cannot be on campus from 9 to 5. So I think in terms of the accessibility, part of it, I think they're really important. I think the problem is a lot of the forms of assessments that they talk about on government is I'm not clear as to how you would implement this in an online course. What are you going to do? You can't do exams that you would proctor, or a lot of these kind of tests, right? You also can't do things like sit-down discussions, because that kind of defeats the point of an asynchronous assessment, when you cannot all be in the same place at the same time. This is why we took the online courses to begin with. I do think this is a good example of a type of restriction that is appropriate to put in place, and I think this is one of the types of restrictions that we would be very happy to defend, because if you're literally just on a personal reflection, not actually saying what you actually personally believe and just copying and pasting from AI, this is not a reflection of your learning at all. So if this is if this is not actually meaningfully helping you learn, I think this is a good example of a case where we should have some sort of crackdowns on these students who are using AIs. We should have AI monitors flagging when these students are blatantly using ChatGPT, and when it's very obvious that this is not what they actually believe.
I see that we have one final question. I'll let you ask your question. We're just going to restrict the time to 1 minute on each side. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks. I'm joining the faculty. My first day is tomorrow, and
Congratulations. Welcome to Waterloo.
Thank you. So I was really excited to be here and hear like what is the culture here around this. So I've been working in the healthcare industry for about 12 years, and so making the leap back into academia is exciting for me. But you know, my questions are really around some of the ethical issues that come up with the use of AI, and that goes for the data, you know, the resale value of the data, the intellectual property of the professor who's giving that assignment, the intellectual property of the thinker, of the student, and how those ideas can follow them around now for the rest of their lives because it's been put into a prompt in a way that my handwritten essays of yore are just gone now. Like, who knows what happened to them kindling for the bonfire. But then also like that right to be forgotten that you may not necessarily get with use of AI, but also the environmental impact that was raised by the speaker here, and the ethics again, the emotional ethics of having you know, an AI response to something that's meant to be personal. So I'm really quite interested in, you know, that intersection of AI with ethics, and that goes for, you know, the individual who's using it and what they're saying, and that it's not really anonymous, it's following you, the environmental impact of using AI over a traditional Google search, and the environmental, the emotional impact of AI use in responses.
Thanks for your question. Yeah. So 1 minute to each side. We'll start with a proposition. I realize that's a lot to unpack in 1 minute, but you can give it a go.
From what I understand at Waterloo with Copilot is that it's supposed to not be keeping our data. Now, I haven't investigated too much as to why they want us to use Copilot and not other ones. But we are still putting it into a data machine, and who knows. So I think it's a fair point. I don't have much to say besides I think it's a fair point. I'm not sure how the university is dealing with that entirely. The environmental impacts, I think, is also, I mean, I teach environmental studies. Like, I'm definitely against the amount of energy that's going into this, especially when a lot of it's just for profit and not really bringing much meaning to our lives. You know, again, we have to also evaluate, is it worse than us flying on our vacation? I mean, in terms of emissions, I think we have to also take and check that there's different scales of impact and what is good or not. But just to circle back to our main point, my main point is that I actually think lifting restrictions and doing dialogical assessment will actually reduce the use of AI. So I'm actually making an argument, I guess, against as much use of it in that sense.
Yeah, so the ethical implications of AI are off the charts in a way, right? Like so there's the what it's doing to the environment in terms of the, you know, the amount of energy it requires it's absolutely enormous. One of the things that I'm really interested in now is how its connection to this kind of rapacious capitalism that's, you know, part of the tech industry's future. And that concerns me, and like you said, for intellectual property and that sort of thing. So you're hitting all those points. I'm also concerned too about, I'm just reading this book by a German author, Rainer Mühlhoff, about artificial intelligence and the new fascism. And he's making this incredibly insightful argument about how AI is, in the way it's kind of, you know, embedded in or woven into this whole notion of capitalism, et cetera, that it could lead to a whole new kind of thought control, to put it in. Now, I haven't read the whole book, but that's an ethical concern for sure. Yeah, thanks.
So that's all we have time for tonight, folks. I'd like to thank you all for coming.